this idea, the beauty of nature, and how that can be a revelation in and of itself. And that's as old as time, right? We've always had this idea that nature's its revelation, the idea of the word and world, they're just a few few, I mean, just one letter apart, right? And it's just we can understand God when we look at nature. And I was thinking this week we got a super moon coming up. Like, who knew? And my wife did a little research on that, and the super moon would be the brightest moon we've had since like 2019 or something like that. Anyhow, and so that just got me thinking, a beautiful little aside, which is on the beauty of the moon and how that works into this concept of correspondences, and why it gets back. First question: why does nature mean so much to us? And why, when we're out there in nature, can we many times feel God more closely? Well, the reason why is that there's this big spiritual concept called correspondences. In other words, correspondences mean that the natural and the spiritual world kind of have these mirrors of each other that interplay back and forth and back and forth. So we can look at something and we can go like, oh, isn't that beautiful? And I think, as many of you know, I lost my dad last week, and there's this beautiful thing, seeing a sunset. Just saw some beautiful sunsets, and this morning saw a beautiful sunrise. Both of those are reminders of my dad, and that's the correspondence. Something within us spiritually responds to something out there naturally, and it's that beautiful tie back and forth. And I want to talk for a minute, coming back then, to how this works with the moon. It's one of my favorite little correspondences from Christian New Church theology. It's the idea that the moon is faith. If we think of our faith, or think of our intellectual constructs around God, this trust in God, these intellectual, but it's an intellectual thing. It's something where God makes sense in our brains, and we can put together kind of a paradigm. We can put together sort of an outline of how this life works, which is a beautiful thing, and that can be very comforting. It can be a lot of fun to kind of delve into. It can be a lot of fun to have conversations around, particularly with people from other faith systems, because you get a chance to see how their intellectual constructs work. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And one of the more remarkable pieces of it is this idea that from a Christian New Church perspective, faith signifies, pictures might be a better word, that very faith. So what does that mean? Well, that idea of the moon signifying faith. Well, think of a beautiful full moon and how incredible that is. And as even was looking around, and there was a group that was doing a kayak trip on this coming supermoon. They're going to get out there on the water, which is beautiful. And the idea that we see that, and when we see the full moon, we really get a chance to see this moon that's reflecting fully the love of God. And that's where faith is just like spectacular. Faith is incredibly beautiful the more fully it reflects the love of God. Say that again. Faith is more beautiful the more it fully reflects the love of God. Now, that isn't always true. Faith doesn't always do that. We certainly have nights where dark night of the soul stuff, clouds covering it over. The moon waxes and wanes. It may be a time where we just don't see as much of the moon. We just see a little sliver of it. And that's because it's not as reflective of love as it should be. And these things run in cycles, right? These things run in cycles. But we always want to be trying to make sure that our faith is deeply, deeply reflective of God's love. And that means that if it's not reflective of God's love, it's just cold. It's just a dead rock. There's nothing to it. And so the takeaway, I think, here is pretty obvious. As we go into this week ahead, really try to find ways to be as absolutely reflective of God's love as you can be. That doesn't mean you have to generate it, or you have to overthink it, or you have to parse it out and get it all figured out. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is where you're just trying as best you can, in a very humble way, imperfect way, to reflect God's love that's just coursing through all of us all the time. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, this morning, just thinking about, one of the things I'd love to do sometime is to do a little dinner that benefits a particular group. And we could call it Dining for Dollars or something. I don't know. It's a name I heard from the past. Little something like that. Like, maybe think of an activity like that this week, something you can do that would be fun, social, reflective of God's love, and actually make a difference in other people's lives. I don't know what that would be, but there's just so many options out there to do that kind of thing. So friends, may you reflect this week of the supermoon on the beauty of the moon and how the moon is incredibly beautiful, when it reflects God's love. And that's the same with our faith. Faith is just such an amazingly beautiful thing when it reflects God's love, and it's especially beautiful when it fully reflects the whole thing. So that's the thought for today, friends. I hope that makes sense. And what we're going to do now is we're going to shift gears, as we always do here at New Church Live. We're going to do a little meditation, a little prayer, a little blessing, and then we will say hi to friends who are joining us on Facebook. So with that, dear friends, let's get a little breath. Meditation. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's give a little cheery hello to friends who might have joined us on Facebook. Let's take a quick little look there. All right, I'll come over there. Sherry, we've been away for a month. Missed you. Been working. Thinking of you. Well, thank you very much, Sherry. And watching your trip as well. It's been fun, and it's definitely been a journey. Past month, sort of like, wow, ready for life to just be a little calmer coming up. That's for sure. All right, that's one over here. More comments over here. Marcus, good morning to you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Linda, good morning to you, my friend. Gianni, great to have you back. Totally agree. So wonderful to see everyone here, and wishing you all the very best. Godspeed today, and